Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Real Science Exchange, the podcast where leading scientists and industry professionals meet over a few drinks to discuss the latest ideas and trends in animal nutrition. Hi, I'm Scott Sorrell. This episode is going to be a Real Science Exchange legacy series. This is where we celebrate the pioneers who shaped the face of the dairy industry. Today, we honor Dr. Charlie Staples, a distinguished professor at the University of Florida, whose groundbreaking work in dairy nutrition and mentorship touched countless lives. From his 35 years of research, mentoring 23 graduate students, to earning the American Dairy Science Association's Fellow Award, Dr. Staples' legacy continues to inspire. Join us as we explore his contributions and enduring impact on our industry. To kick it off, we've gathered quite a group of distinguished guests here to honor Dr. Staples. And to start us off, I'd like to introduce Dr. Rick Grummer. Rick, it's awful good to see you again. It's been a while.
Well, thanks for having me, Scott. I tell you what, I don't work very much, and this isn't work today, though. Talking about Dr. Staples. Yeah. What a great guy, and I'm honored that you asked me to be here.
You're very welcome. You know, to start us off, Rick, many of the people out there may not remember Dr. Grummer. Would you kind of remind us, tell us all about Dr. Grummer, and how did you first meet Charlie?
Well, there's not much to tell. Yeah, you're soon forgotten after you retire. Spent most of my career at the University of Wisconsin, followed up with a time with Balchem, retired in the end of 2018. So for the last 7 years, I've been goofing off, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I first met Charlie Staples when I was doing my PhD work at the University of Illinois. And we had a group that were guided by some really great professors. I was guided by Carl Davis, and Jimmy Clark was my master's degree mentor. We had a separate dairy science department from animal science at that time at the University of Illinois. Charlie was actually a graduate student in the animal science department in nutrition, working with a gentleman by the name of George Fahey. George was a student of Pete Van Soest and was a fiber chemist, and Charlie did his PhD work in the area of forages and fiber utilization. But Charlie finished up his degree, and Jimmy Clark hired him on as a postdoc. So he came into the dairy group then, I think it was probably about 1983 or so. And Charlie had the office next to mine, and so I got to know him very well. And great guy. He was always fun to be around.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm looking forward to the conversation, learning more about Charlie. Our next guest is Dr. Jose Santos. Jose, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you first meet Charlie?
Okay, well, my name is Jose Santos. I'm a professor here at the University of Florida. Charlie was my neighbor here in the office, just 2 offices down my door here. So I've been here since 2008. Previously, I was at the University of California, Davis. And I met Charlie when I was actually a graduate student, probably very informally. I went to my very first ADSA meeting. It was in Minnesota. But truly, when I sat down to talk to him was when I had finished graduate school and I was invited to come to Florida for a production conference to give a presentation, and this was in the early 2000s. The Minnesota meeting, the Minneapolis, was, I think, in 1994, so many years ago.
Yeah, good. Looking forward to your stories as well. Dr. Marcos Zenobi from Balchem. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Marcos, and then how did you first meet Charlie?
Yeah, thank you, Scott, for having me here. So I'm Marcos Zenobi. I do technical service on LATAM. I meet Charlie the first time, I think, when I visit Florida. So I did my master in Saskatchewan, Canada. and then we wanted to keep doing postgraduate. So my wife Paula and myself visit Florida as a good opportunity. And actually, I was Bill Thatcher who presented me with Jose. I knew Jose from before, but Bill basically presented me with Charlie. So it was 2013, I believe. So since then, after that, I started a PhD there in Florida, and yeah, you know the story. So
I remember when Marcus came for interview.
yeah.
He and Paula came.
Was that the first
Actually,
time you'd met him?
It's the first time I met Marcus. I had been in conversations with somebody who works with Paula's family, and I wanted to hire him. I just didn't have the money at the
Yeah.
time. So
so
Yeah.
but
Good deal.
the funny thing in the story was that actually I visited another professor that was not a dairy scientist, and then Bill Thatcher got me and said, "You need to meet Charlie." So he put me in the room with Charlie, and since then I started doing the thing. So
Yeah. Good deal. Well, good. Well,
yes,
thanks for
good
joining us,
deal.
Marcos.
Thank you.
Dr. Zimmerman, you know the drill. Tell us about yourself and how'd you meet Charlie?
So I knew Charlie's name for a number of years before joining Balchem. I started here in December 2013, but I really got to know Dr. Staples as we were running Marcos's initial study with Reassure. So probably about 2015, I would say I really got to know Dr. Staples through the research we were doing with Reassure at the University of Florida, and really quite a guy. We really hit it off.
Yeah, I've got a story for Jose Santos, actually. I don't know whether he knew this or not, but when Charlie was working on his postdoc and I was finishing up my PhD, we both were looking for jobs, looking for faculty jobs. And so the first one that came up that we applied to was at Utah State University. And Charlie and I both went out for the interview and came back, and Charlie got the job offer. And he just didn't think it'd be a good fit. And I thought, well, for sure they're going to call me next, and they never called me. So I never got the offer. But anyway, our next job that came open for a faculty position was at the University of Arizona. So Charlie applied and I applied, and we both got interviews, and we both went down and returned to Madison, and we didn't get the job. Neither one of us did. Guess who got it? Tal Huber. So you could have been Charlie's graduate student, or you could have been my graduate student, rather than Tal Huber's. So anyway, it went on, and it all ended up happy. We were having fun competing for these jobs, but finally one came up at Florida and one came up at Wisconsin. And Charlie said, "I'm not applying to Wisconsin. It's way too cold up there. No way." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to apply to Florida because it's way too hot and humid down there." So Charlie applied for the Florida job. I applied for the Wisconsin job, and we both got the jobs where we didn't compete against each other. So all ended well.
That's awesome. So you mentioned that Charlie didn't like the cold weather. Do we know much about Charlie's early years? Jose, you wrote a nice tribute when Charlie passed, far too early, by the way, just a few years ago. And you mentioned a few things in that tribute about his early life. Do you know much about his early life before college? The economics of feeding Reassure precision release choline. Reassure is fed during the transition period, And because it's fed for such a short period of time, it costs just $15 per cow. And yet the benefits will continue to generate income throughout the year. Cows fed ReAssure produce 5 pounds more colostrum, which pays for your ReAssure investment on the very first day of lactation. Cows fed ReAssure also produce 5 pounds more milk per day, every day. That means after the first day, every day is payday. Invest in ReAssure during the transition period and recoup your investment on the very first day of lactation. After that, you got it, payday.
Not a lot of details, only a few things that he shared with me. So he was born in Colorado, and spent his youth between Colorado and New Mexico before he eventually went to college at New Mexico State University. But he lived in the countryside. I remember Charlie would always say, because he was a quite religious person. When I first moved to Gainesville, they were having all these seminars, about on campus, not in a particular department, on campus, about religion and science. It was a time that the former head of NIH, Francis Collins, he had written a couple of books because he was initially an atheist, and then he became a scientist to the point that he became director of the National Institutes of Health, and he wrote books about how he reconciles science with his religious beliefs. So they were having these things, and I remember I went to one of those, and guess who was sitting in the very first row was Charlie Staples. So he grew up in that type of environment where religion was part of day-to-day life. But he never really told me a lot about his youth relative to growing up, his families or siblings. So that I don't know very much, to be honest. I know really about his life once he got into college. After he got to college, that's really where we talked the most, because we spent a lot of time talking. I would go to his office and discuss things with him about work, but also about life and things that I like and things that he liked. He was a excellent person to talk about personal things. So
Yeah.
I enjoy that, discussing that with him. So
Yeah. Do you know much about his family?
yeah, well, I've been to his house several times. His wife, Debbie, he's got 2 daughters. Both of them are married. One was here with his wife, with Debbie. The other one lives in Delray Beach here in Florida. They're both here. They're all here in Florida. Uh, uh, the last time I visit his wife, it's been a little over a year. And I communicate through emails with one of his sons-in-law because we hold here in the department a Staples lecture. So every year we invite a speaker to come to meet graduate students and give presentations to the faculty, give a seminar, and and we let the family know because maybe they want to come. So we had people actually who had some past with Charlie. Kirk Clasing was at one point at the University of Illinois before he went to UC Davis, and he was the first invited speaker for the Staples lecture. Just this last year, we had a professor from University of Sydney. So whenever those events take place here, we have like 3 of those events. We tend to invite the families to come, and maybe some of them will come to attend a seminar. So I've communicated typically with his son-in-law and with his daughters. His wife, I only see if I stop by the house and knock on the door. Yeah, but he's got 2 daughters.
I remember very, very fondly when he was doing his postdoc and I was doing my PhD. At the University of Illinois, we had what was called the Nutrition Field Lab. We had a round barn that actually housed cattle, and we did experiments in the round barn, but we also had a lab associated with that farm. And excuse me, I'm probably going to end up calling him a doc, because that was what we called him when he was there as a postdoc. He wasn't ever called Charlie. He was always just called Doc. So anyway, if I call him Doc, you know who I mean. Anyway, Doc would come out to the field lab to do his lab work, and every once in a while he'd have in tow these two cute girls. They were the cutest little girls you'd ever seen, Spring and Charity. And I tell you what, they were just a joy to be around and have out at the field lab. And it was great. Charlie was the only one in the whole group that had kids, so it was kind of refreshing to see young faces around every once in a while.
Yeah. Did you know Debbie very well, Rick?
Not real well. She was a very quiet person. Fairly shy, but really a great mother, and I know a great wife to Charlie.
Yeah, I remember that when I started the PhD with Dr. Stable, and he told me that I was the first student with family that he was taking. I was like, well, is that an issue or not? I was not sure about that, right? And he told me that he had family earlier in the career, as Dr. Grummer said, and he was really helpful on that path with me, with the family. So yeah, he was really family builder. I don't know how to express this, but he helped us a lot with the postdoc and with the PhD and the family too. So
yeah,
he really liked the kids too.
So you mentioned, he's a great family man, strong Christian faith. Did Charlie have any hobbies?
Did some golfing some days, but I don't know if that was a hobby, like hobby. So I don't know, Jose, maybe you can expand that. But
yeah, so if you ask him, he would say golfing and racquetball. But truly, his hobby was to go and watch the Florida Gators basketball games, I would say. He had seasons tickets, and he would go to every single game, whether they won like this year or they were the last place and stay to the end. So yeah, that would be probably, if I had to say what his hobby was basketball and be in the court to watch the Florida Gators.
That's
Interesting.
a good lead into one of my Charlie stories. With Charlie, this was, I think, in the early 2000s, decided to do a sabbatic. And he decided to actually come up and do it in my laboratory. And actually, that was quite an honor to have him come up. And so I thought, as part of being in Wisconsin for a year, I had to introduce him to some of my hobbies. So I made sure to get him up to our cabin to do a little fishing, take him out grouse hunting, and get him introduced into the woods that way. But the greatest story was when we took him smelt dipping. And people probably don't know what smelt dipping is, but
no idea.
Basically, smelt are part of the Great Lakes ecosystem. They're in Lake Michigan, and every spring they migrate towards shores and to the rivers to do their spawning. And we took Charlie smelt dipping, where you go out on a breaker in a harbor, and on this breaker you have a net, and you dip this net down into the water. And when the run starts later in the evening, then you will bring the nets up, and you'll have just, in the heyday, there were just hundreds and hundreds of smelt. We'd fill 5-gallon buckets of smelt. And so I thought Charlie should experience this, because it's really quite the scene. And as a joke, he told Charlie, well, first time you're out smelt dipping, when that net comes up with the first batch of smelt, a rookie, a newbie, has to bite the head off the smelt.
Don't tell me he did that.
And, and Charlie says, no, no way, no way. So that night, for whatever reason, basically the smelt were not running. Finally, we brought up the net, and there was one smelt, just one single smelt in that net. And so we looked at Charlie and Charlie said, there's no way I'm going to do it first. If one of you guys does it, I'll do it. So a guy named Paul Roden, a nutrition consultant, was actually with us. He spit the head off the smelt and threw the body in the pail and spit the head out. And Charlie was committed at that time. Well, we dipped the nets and dipped the nets and dipped the nets, and not another smelt came. But it just so happened we pulled up, I think it was a sucker. And these smelts are only about 2 or 3 inches long. The sucker was about a foot long. So we said, Charlie, it's your turn. You got to bite the head off of that sucker. Anyway, we let him go. We didn't make him do it, but that was our smelt making experience. Unfortunately, we never ran that night.
But what do you do with smelts when you're not biting the heads off of them? What are they good for?
Well, you basically take them home. You don't have to remove the head if you don't want to, but you just slit the belly and take out the guts, and then you throw the whole fish into a deep fat fryer.
Deep fryer.
Wet it and throw it in, and then get it good and crunchy. And
yeah.
They sound like a bait for bigger fish.
That's well, they were, and what happened was there was also an invasive species. I think it was the alewives in Lake Michigan that got too proliferative, and so then they introduced trout into Lake Michigan, steelhead and lake trout and whatever, and that population took off and took care of the alewives and the smelt both, I think. So the numbers are way down.
That's too bad. Marcos, you studied under Dr. Staples. Can you talk to us a little bit about Charlie as an educator, as a mentor, and some of the things that he meant to you?
Yeah. So, well, with Charlie, I had the privilege of taking classes. Okay, he was my professor, but also I was teaching assistant. So I was working with him alongside in some of the courses that he gave. So I was in both sides with him, right? He was really organized, really. Every day his lecture was carefully planned. Nothing was left to chance. But what truly stood out was his ability to connect with students or with me, right? He was patient, calm, and he was always willing to help a student, even in extra times. So he really cared about people. Okay, that's probably the most easy and way to describe Dr. Sebi. He was always helping people. Okay, and he did that with me and with the family. So basically, Charlie gave 100% of himself for the student, either undergraduates or graduate student like me. And of course, he was always available. Jose probably know this. He always had the door open for students, and he was always present in our programs. So that kind of consistency probably is rare in graduate student. It's not easy for professor to have time for all the student. That probably made the difference between Dr. Stable and other professors. So I don't know.
Yeah, he was like Marco said, very detailed. He would take notes. So when I came, we had a professor here who taught a course in ruminant nutrition, and he left maybe 3 or 4 months after I came. So that class disappeared from the graduate program. So one day, maybe 6 months or a year after I was here, my appointment at the time had no teaching. It was research extension. And I came to Charlie and I said, Charlie, have you thought about this? so-and-so left, and now our graduate students don't have any class that has a focus on ruminants. So everything, if they want, they would have to go to the nutritional sciences department, which a lot today is on dietetics. It's not anymore, seems like, in the traditional metabolism of nutrients. It's about an intervention in humans and with a very heavy human focus. So I told Charlie, why don't we team up and teach this class? We can get the notes that he has, and we can build the course back up and offer in the following years. So we did that, and we shared that class. It was a graduate level ruminant nutrition course. So I would go and prepare my lectures. We divide the course in two. Basically, he teaches half. I said, tell me what lectures you prefer to teach. And he went on and picked his choices. Yeah. And I picked mine. And it was very easy to agree with Charlie. It was
Yeah.
somebody who was easy to give, but also ask. Yeah. So he was a very easy person to work with.
Yeah.
So I would prepare my lectures and put figures and tables and this and that. And I would go to his office and he would be taking notes, like in PowerPoint, you write things there. So I learned from Charlie, because once I taught my first year, you read a lot of things. There are things that you don't work with on a daily basis. And you have to refresh before you go in front of students, because you get PhD students who are reading all the time. They're going to probably ask you questions that, hey, I just don't remember this. Yeah. A biochemical pathway or something like that. So I would read and read and read, and Charlie would take notes and notes and notes. The following time I go to teach, Charlie has all his notes taken. I have to read and read and read again. So I learned from him. Now I take notes of things that I don't do all the time, because otherwise you got to go to every single paper. Why are they doing this exactly? What's the context here? So you can tell students a story. Yeah, why the results are like this or that. Yeah. So yeah, that was a lesson he taught me. Yeah, take notes, Jose, because otherwise you're going to have to redo a lot of those things in the following years, because things, they go away from your mind. Yeah, sometimes they vanish, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's kind of a nice segue into talking a little bit about Charlie's professional career. And I don't know, maybe Rick, can you maybe kind of give us maybe kind of a broad overview to start with of Charlie's career?
Yeah, I can do that, and then maybe Jose can get into it from a more detailed standpoint. But again, Charlie did his training in fiber and forage utilization, and when he first went down to Florida, he started, in his comfort zone, I think, a little bit in that area. But it wasn't too long before he really became, I think, one of the pioneers in this whole area of nutrition and reproduction. A gal by the name of Barbara Barton, that you all know because she spent some time at Balchem. She was kind of one of the first that started in that area, working at the University of Maine and looking at what effects protein, especially degradable protein, may have on reproduction, namely a negative effect. And Jim Ferguson dabbled in that a little bit, and but they never, Barb went into industry. She didn't stay at the university for long, and Jim Ferguson was more in the vet school type scenario where he wasn't doing a lot of research. So, that door was wide open, and Charlie walked through it in a big way. It initially started a little bit in the protein area, but then he got into this whole idea. Well, what about supplemental fat? And started doing research in that area. Actually, as a postdoc with Jimmy Clark, he collaborated with Bill Thatcher on the study he was doing as part of his postdoc, taking a look at energy balance as it may affect progesterone profiles and resuming cycling and whatnot. So he had some of that in his postdoc, but but it wasn't long that he really got into that at the University of Florida. And boy, I don't know the exact date, but it was probably the mid to later 90s. He gave an invited presentation and symposium paper at ADSA on the topic of fat and energy and reproduction. And boy, I'll never forget that presentation. Talking about a hard worker and a guy who really was willing to go the extra mile. He went back through all that literature and looked at fat feeding studies and what reproductive data there was and what energy balance data there was. And that's really where he came up with this concept. In some of these studies, these cows were doing better from a reproductive standpoint, even though energy balance wasn't improved and wasn't any better. And that's where I think he really was quite remarkable in teaming up with Bill Thatcher, and saying, hey, there's got to be something more to it than just energy. There's got to be maybe something, I guess, I don't know if this is the right word anymore, but something in the bioactive fatty acids that are affecting the cow in some way and affecting reproduction. And then when Jose went there, then it was a slam dunk. I mean, this was the mecca of nutrition reproduction research in the whole world, and really carved a great path in that area. And I'll let Jose, you can talk about how it went from there, but boy, they had a lot of great studies where they were looking at it at more, identified the complexity of it than just being calories. There was something else there that was going on, and that was, to me, that ended up really being Charlie's legacy. Now, other people may think there's some other area of research, but that's how I think of Charlie and the legacy and that whole Florida group, really.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. He comes from his postdoc with Jimmy Clark. He came with that background. But Florida, the department here always had this strong collaborative nature of people working together, this interdisciplinary aspect. For example, in Charlie's case, was the fact that he teamed up with Bill Thatcher. Huh? Not only with Bill, but also Pete Hansen and others here in the department, depending upon what area he was devoting his effort. But that is probably the area that he had the greatest impact. I always thought of Charlie as doing some of the work on fiber, markers, digestion, and then he had this phase of working together with Bill in the area of nutrients affecting reproduction and fatty acids was probably a big effort. And then later on, there was a mixture of heat stress and choline work that he did with Balchem. But the fatty acid work, and particularly what Rick mentioned, the fact that he separate the energy effect from this fatty acid effect that he mentioned in that particular paper, the review article, really create opportunities. And a lot of people then start focusing on either whole animal experiments, which are a little tougher because of we have to deal with the rumen, but also in vitro experiments looking at how fatty acids affect reproductive tissues such as the corpus luteum, endometrial cells. So there was quite a bit of work done here between him and Bill, looking at how prostaglandin is secreted by the endometrium of cows when exposed to different fatty acids, embryo development and effects on interferon tau production in vivo and in vitro, and then combinations of fatty acid work with growth hormone, because at the time growth hormone was something that was coming into the market in the mid 80s, mid 90s. I think growth hormone was approved in 94 for use in lactating cows or something like that. So yeah, they were doing all those exciting projects infusion experiments looking at uterine secretion of prostaglandin, in vitro experiments, and that created this new area of design fat products, which now has moved to a different area, looking at stimulating transfer of fat into milk because of the price of fat. But at the time was a heavy effort on reproduction. So, and that's probably, like Rick said, one of the biggest contributions he's made during his career. And that was a wonderful time to be here in Florida because of this collaborative nature of people doing one portion of the project and somebody think of a different area because of the interdisciplinary aspect of those experiments. Yeah, many PhD students between Bill and Charlie went through that phase.
Yeah, when we had undergraduates that were interested in going to graduate school, you'd always say, "Boy, if you want to get in an exciting area, nutrition and reproduction, boy, you gotta go to Florida and get in with that group down there." And you know,
And I believe that during his postdoc, he went to work with you, but he also collaborate between you and Milo, yeah? You guys were
yeah,
doing things together with fatty acids.
yeah, he came up and we got a company
For his sabbatical.
to make basically calcium salts of specific fatty acids, and so we were going to blend diets specifically to be consistent in all fatty acids except for one, so that we could look at the effect of a specific fatty acid. So when he came up, he did that, and of course he was into the reproduction area at that time, and worked with Milo as well. But you said something, Jose, that really hit me, and that is his. And I think it's true of all of you at Florida, but his willing to collaborate and bring in collaborators onto a project, and that kind of gets me back to when I was with Balchem, and we had some funding to do a project, and I don't know whether I need to get into the details of that or not, but anyway, I had gone to a few universities that were well known for transition cow research, and had discussions with them on potentially collaborating on a project, and got a couple of people interested. They went ahead and forwarded a proposal to me in the area that we were interested in, and quite frankly, the budgets came back pretty high. And I remember my boss kind of giving me, wow. And so at it just was circumstance that it was at an ADSA meeting, and Charlie and I always got together for a breakfast or a lunch or dinner, whatever worked out. And I sat down with Charlie and I said, "Hey, Charlie, would you have any interest in doing a project with choline in transition cows?" And, he had dabbled a little bit in transition cow work in his studies, but that wasn't his forte. But, I knew he had dabbled, and I knew he did great work. And so I just threw the idea out there. And he said, "Sure, yeah, I'd like to do that." And so he went back and worked up his proposal, and it came back at a bargain price compared to what these other quotes I had gotten for doing this project. And but the amazing thing was, not only was the price about 50 to 60% of what these others were, he went out and he reached out to the Bill Thatchers, and you had that young lactation biologist on staff at the time, and he put together a proposal that had much more being looked at than what I was mainly interested in. And it was just amazing the way he got people involved with that project. And that's the one that you got, Marcos, for your PhD studies. And really, because of those collaborations and bringing in those other people and getting people involved, is how all of a sudden this whole idea of, well, gee, maybe there's an effect on the calf, and calf health and etc. And if it wouldn't have been for Charlie and his desire to reach out to people and to collaborate and enrich the project and make it much better than what we had approached him with, that led to a whole new era of choline research, and just a great example of Charlie and how he was just willing to work with everybody and get everybody involved. It's just amazing. And that's, to be quite honest, that's something that we didn't do very well at Wisconsin within our nutrition group. So I had so much admiration for that.
So
Yeah, I think a major part of his persona is he was always very unassuming and humble. Yeah, and I think a little bit of the environment here, together with his personality, that merged really well. So he wasn't afraid of asking things that he didn't know. He would ask questions, and like Marcus said, he was always willing to help. So if I didn't know something he didn't know, Bill Thatcher didn't know, we would go and search people who might know something that we were interested on. And that was a great time when I moved here. I came from a place that I was somewhat on my own, where I was in my previous job. And when I came here, when we went to discuss the very first experiment, I submitted a grant and eventually got funded. Yeah, we had lots of meetings like that to decide what we're going to do, how we're going to do, who's going to do this and that and that. So it was a very enriching experience to me, because I had not gone through that as a professional, because I didn't have that kind of environment. But and this comes from a legacy of previous generations of people here in the department, but also to a large extent, I think, is people like Charlie and Bill and others. They always had that collaborative nature. I guess they were not afraid of what they knew, what they knew, and they knew what they did not know. Let's put it this way. Yeah.
So, Rick, I think I've got this story right. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm thinking back in time here. So Charlie, being new to the choline area at the time, he really dug in and did a thorough literature search on this. And Marcos, you probably did a lot of this work, but didn't Charlie present at the Southwest Nutrition Conference, basically all the findings up to that point on choline?
Yeah, I think that you're right. We wrote a proceeding for that conference, and he presented, as Dr. Grummer mentioned, a full presentation of all the research from the last 30 years. So, yes, yeah. But
Yeah,
I will make.
Go ahead, Marcos.
No, I will make a comment. I remember that we did a feed restricted trial. To remember very well, probably Dr. Santos. But we have a doubt about fatty acids, and he got the phone and he called Palmquist.
Palmquist, Donald Palmquist. Yeah.
Yes, and we started talking in the phone with him about fatty acids. He was amazing. He didn't have any problem to call somebody that knows more than him about to learn something. So it was a great experience. I do remember that day.
And Charlie was the generation that would make a phone call.
Yes,
Not
yes.
a text message or anything. He grabbed his phone and called. He had a Rolodex that had all the addresses there, not even the computer.
They have the cards, yeah, the personal business card, yes.
Yeah. Any other key aspects of Charlie's career that we need to discuss as we're getting ready to wind down here?
I'll tell you a story. The joke here in the department is that when both Bill and Charlie were very active, they would go to meetings together. And like Bill is known as Wild Bill, yeah, and Charlie is the more moderate, calm person. And the joke is that they would room together, and then Wild Bill will go and sing, and Charlie would pray for him. So there are many many stories between the two.
Yeah.
That's a great
So,
story.
yeah, I may have a question for Dr. Grummer and Dr. Santos. Have you seen Dr. Staples mad or angry in your life? I mean, I haven't. So he never was mad with me or with anything that we did. We did many things wrong, but he never was mad with me or something that goes wrong. So he was really calm and listened to people, and it was amazing. So, but I never saw him mad basically. So it was amazing. I was with him like 5 years, so quite a long time. So
I
No,
think you're right, Marcus. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead,
yeah,
Rick.
I can't say that I've ever seen him vocally become out on out on a limb or outrageous at all. I mean, he had
yeah,
facial
no, it's
expressions. You could read his facial expressions. Once in a while, when you could tell that, maybe something wasn't quite right, but no, he was. He had a demeanor, and I have a list of about 3 people who, whenever I'm around him, I always think, why can't I be more like that guy?
yeah,
And Charlie's at the
yes,
top of that list. I mean, why can't I be more like Charlie? He was such an example of a great human being, a great mentor, great man of faith. Just no, he was pretty cool, pretty neat guy. You
yes. Yeah. I could say the same. He's one of the top 3 guys that I try to apply learning that from him every day. So yes, it was pretty angry or like uh, reactive, and he basically taught me to sit, think, and then react basically. So he was really really nice on that. So
Well, I
nothing
knew he
nothing is bad.
probably had to
Nothing
be a
is bad.
great guy to. I I knew he probably had to be a great guy to work for because when we were doing the choline project, and I came down a couple of times for, I guess you'd call it a site visit, and man, he was out in the barn with you guys collecting samples, bleeding cows, taking biopsies, and man, I was an old fart. This is when he's 60 years old or so. By the time I got to that stage, I was pretty much an ivory tower guy and didn't get out in the barn and get smelly very often. But boy, Charlie was still there, and I thought, what a great example. It made me think back to the days when I actually did that kind of thing and how much fun it was, and I think how probably beneficial it was to the students. But there he was at that, you know, twilight of his career, still out there, mentoring and teaching, and just a great example.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Ju- ju- one more comment, Scott, if can. Maybe Jose correct me if I'm wrong, but when I met Charlie, he was ready to retire. And actually, he decided to take me, I think, just to help me. I think because I remember he told me, okay, I may have a project with Balchem, but let's work with Dr. Santos. Let's split the work. I will basically help you with the writing, the thesis, all that, but then the rest you will work with Dr. Santos. But I think that he was ready. I was the last student, and
Yeah,
I think that he didn't work. I mean, I was the last one, but he just tried to help me, basically. I think.
yeah. He was. You were probably between you and the, a master student who came right after you. But Charlie, the plan is that he was going to retire in the next couple of years, and then you came, and it took a little longer for him to retire. Then obviously, Juan came and took the very end of his professional career here because Charlie knew that his cancer was coming back, so he wanted to enjoy life away from work.
Yeah,
But he was a man of principles. I have to say that, and I'll tell you an important principle for Charlie. It's actually a very important one I learned from him. We had 2 rounds of search for an animal welfare position here in the department. And at the time, we would bring candidates in and take them to dinner, and they would spend like 2 or 3 days here, give a seminar, meet the deans, meet colleagues, meet students, this whole 9 yards of an interview. And with the interview, you take people to lunch and dinner, but particularly dinner when you're away from campus, and it's more of a time to get to know the person. And the rule was that you take to a steakhouse. If an animal welfare person ordered fish in a steakhouse, you just don't hire that person. You better order steak, because that person will represent us whenever there is a problem somewhere. And if the person is not in favor of animal production and consuming animal products that we work with, maybe it's not a good fit for us. So
Yeah.
that was one of the principles that Charlie followed religiously.
Yeah. Funny. Rick, you were telling me another story when we were talking earlier today that I want to make sure that we bring in here.
Well, he was a man of principle, and he was a man of great faith, and it was the Memphis ADSA meetings, and I don't you're too young to remember that one, but Jose or maybe Clay
I
remembers.
was
I was
there.
there, 1999, I
But
think.
it was kind of in a seedier part of town. The convention center was, and there are quite a number of homeless people there, and we walked past a homeless guy with his cup out there, and I looked at Charlie and I said, I'd really like to put something in his cup, but I'm always worried that they're going to take that and maybe use it for alcohol or drugs or whatever. And Charlie goes, "Well, I got a way of dealing with that." So he goes up to the guy and he goes, "Are you hungry?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, I'm hungry." He said, "Well, there's a McDonald's a block away from here. Let's go get a bite to eat." So Charlie and I took this homeless guy to McDonald's.
Yeah.
This guy ordered like 3 or 4 quarter pounders and a couple French fries and a soda. And that was just Charlie. He would go the extra mile to help somebody out. And again, it was just part of his nature, part of his upbringing, and part of his background. And just where I was the guy who, yeah, I want to do something, but no, I'm not gonna do it. He had a way to deal with that, right? And he had done it before too. It was pretty clear that he was just a great guy in every way that you could even mention.
Yeah. These legacy series are designed to honor the career achievements of people in our industry. But as we've been going along in our conversation, I've been taking a few notes of things that I heard you guys say and words that you said. And some of those words are humble, unassuming, kind, collaborative, decent, man of principles. And I have to believe, just knowing the kind of guy that Charlie was, that's the kind of tribute I think that's what he wants to be known for. That's the legacy he wants to leave behind. And, that all the research accolades are fine, but I think being known for the man that he was is probably what's most important to him. As we wind down here, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to kind of go around the room and just get a couple final comments from each of you guys, a couple things you'd like to share with the audience. And Clay, as always, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to start with you, sir.
Welcome to the next generation in chelated minerals. Introducing new Keysure Plus amino acid chelated minerals from Balchem. Keysure Plus delivers a higher concentration of mineral with a superior amino acid profile. The higher mineral content adds formulation flexibility, opening up space in the ration, and also reduces the carbon footprint. The superior amino acid profile delivers 28% protein from microbial biomass and reduces the amount of supplemental lysine needed in the ration. The Keysure Plus line also offers a granulated form for improved handling characteristics and reduced dust. Visit Balchem.com to see how new Keysure Plus can deliver the added benefits you need to improve performance and reduce manufacturing hurdles.
So I didn't really get to know Dr. Staples till very late in his career, but I really, really got close with him with the work we did with him. And obviously, we worked with him a lot through the Florida-Grummer Nutrition Symposium as well. So just a great man. I really miss him. Um, I do want to mention he's a Tom Petty fan. I did not know that the famous musician Tom
Yes.
Petty was from Gainesville until Charlie told me that. So yeah, just a really great person.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Clay. Marcos, any words from you?
Well, yeah. So I guess for me and a student, probably Charlie didn't just teach us animal science. I guess he taught us how to treat others. Some words that you mentioned: respect, passion, humility, right? Basically, he taught us how to lead with grace and to take the time to really show up for people. So we miss him. So, but I guess this legacy podcast is for him and to remember him. So
Yeah.
thank you,
We'll
Scott.
be missing Marcos. No, thank you. Jose?
Yeah. So we live in this I somewhat of a competitive world. Yeah. So you go to a meeting and you listen to somebody giving a presentation or a student, or there's always like sometimes you have questions, or sometimes your nature or human nature is to challenge the person out there if you disagree, for instance. Yeah. Charlie just had a way of disagreeing without telling you that, hey, I disagree, but asking questions and being kind to people, although, yeah, he wasn't 100% in agreement with what you're saying. But the way he presented that was never a confrontational. So he taught you how to communicate without telling the other person that, hey, I'm in disagreement with you. So that was part of his nature. He was an avid reader of books related to the U.S. Civil War. He liked history. He liked to read about religion. But I think, as everybody said, above all, we miss him here dearly, because he was just a great person to be around and talk to and communicate. Uh, yeah, he had somewhat of a father figure for a lot of uh, myself and other colleagues here in the department. Probably Bill would, although Bill was older than him, would probably say the same thing. Probably got plenty of good advice from Charlie because they're quite different in terms of personalities. Yeah. So.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Jose. Rick, going to give you the final words if you'll close us out, please.
Yeah, I guess coming into this, I didn't know which direction it would go, and maybe the desire of it was to go down into the nitty gritty of his scientific contribution, and we maybe spent more time on what a tremendous family man he was, tremendous mentor, great scientist, great at the scientific principles and methodologies and statistical methodologies. So I don't want to diminish that contribution from him, because he certainly made many that way as well. But he was one fine guy, and we all miss him terribly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, gentlemen, thank you for sharing your stories, your knowledge, your time, and your memories tonight. It's been good to catch up with everybody and to share conversations about a great man. To our loyal listeners out there, thank you for joining us on this special episode of the Real Science Exchange Legacy Series honoring Dr. Charlie Staples. His dedication to dairy science, mentorship, and innovation has left us a lasting mark on our field. The University of Florida established the Charles R. Staples Lecture Endowment, and if you'd like to support the endowment, you can do so by visiting UF/IFAS Animal Sciences Giving webpage. So stay tuned for more stories of scientific pioneers. And until next time, we hope you learned something. We hope you had some fun, and we hope to see you next time here at the Real Science Exchange, where it's always happy hour and you're always among friends.
We'd love to hear your comments or ideas for topics and guests, so please reach out via email to anh.marketing@balchem.com with any suggestions, and we'll work hard to add them to the schedule. Don't forget to leave a 5-star rating on your way out. You can request your Real Science Exchange t-shirt in just a few easy steps. Just like or subscribe to the Real Science Exchange and send us a screenshot along with your address and t-shirt size to anh.marketing@balchem.com. Balchem's Real Science Lecture Series of webinars continues with ruminant-focused topics on the first Tuesday of every month, monogastric-focused topics on the second Tuesday of each month, and quarterly topics for the companion animal segment. Visit balchem.com/realscience to see the latest schedule and to register for upcoming webinars.